Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of When Leaders Evolve. And today I have with me once more a really good friend who I have known now, I think it's at least 15 years. And we have been, I would say, walking alongside our paths for many ups and downs in our personal and also professional life. So when I look back where I was when I met Frank, we were organizing events in a venue that Frank had developed and opened for amazing different kinds of artists and events. Some of you might know it. We will talk about it later. Anyways, 15 years ago, and then we were just, meeting each other in the most amazing coincidences again, and we had a similar interests. So we were really following our paths from Berlin to Hamburg to Guatemala, we can say now even. And lately we have been also deciding to collaborate more and work more together in one of the visions that Frank has already been pursuing for so many years. And I'm very grateful and feel honored to be part of that now. We're going to speak about that also. So yeah, just giving a little bit of context to this interview, to this conversation we're going to have, because we know each other for a very long time. And I'm very grateful that it's not often that you meet people on a professional level and then the journey continues to grow and to inspire each other, evolve into something really beautiful. And I really honor and respect you, Frank, for your leadership for so many years. I was always impressed how you could, lead and guide and hold space for your teams. It was always really beautiful to see how you're working with your teams. And that's why I invited you, because I'm really interested in sharing your wisdom and your experiences with the world, and see that hopefully some of them outside who are listening might be inspired by what you're going to share with us today. So welcome, Frank.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dannie. And what an introduction. You mentioned it. We are aiming to talk maybe half an hour, and this sounds like a lifelong love story. And it feels like it. It's really, 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 I can only second that. Great honor and pleasure to talk with you and to be invited in your valuable podcast.
Yeah, thank you. So let's see where this is leading us. The first question I would have for you: who are you? Where are you today? And what experiences helped you to come to this place where you are today? So the first question I actually have is, when you, or let's say when people look at your work today and they see how you are developing these beautiful regenerative real estate projects, we can say, and visionary projects together with artists, together with architects, together with people who are building landscape models and stuff, they might not really know the journey and what has been guiding you internally. So for me, the first question would be really interesting to see, let's say, before Earth Guardian or also before Real Future existed, the companies that you have built and are running today, who were you as a leader, and with what were you wrestling internally that led you to co-create these new projects, these new companies?
Yeah, good question. And a very personal question, of course. And it's really, if I think back to all my entrepreneurial starting in my studies, when I studied business administration and studied the economic system, the global system we are still living in, and that's still ruling at least the western part or the most part of our planet, the society and economics, everything we have and buy and think we need. And that's it already, the way I mentioned that now is it already implies it was 30 years ago. And I still always had this gut feeling, maybe it's an intuition thing where you think something is wrong, it can't be right. The system is, I mean, that's a system, it's numbers, demand and supply or whatever factors play into a systemic structure where you learn about how to gain markets and customers or whatever you learn. And always, and that's how also I was very inspired by Tim Smith's talk, by the way, at the Utopia conference, where we actually also met probably the first time, where he mentioned that we always all believed, I mean, that was 15 years ago, 17 years ago even, people are remaining so confident with this claim, there is no limit. That's what he said. No, there's no limit. And this belief of limitlessness, of endless extraction, endless capacities the planet just derives, and it's a wrong belief of abundance, understanding of abundance, and that's what I felt before that. I thought, no, it can't be right that we are just taking and not giving back. There was no such thing as a circular economy at that time. I just started to call myself egopreneur or impact social entrepreneurship. That's what kind of just thing in the European entrepreneurial scene after the internet bubble. I mean, we're talking about the early 2000s. You could say that on the other side, I felt super alone because there was nobody, there was no alliances. I felt alone as well, and I felt strange. I felt misplaced. I felt as an entrepreneur, I felt as a change maker. I wanted to boldly go. I wanted to change the system and create impact in this core. That's why I stays. And you also mentioned up and downs, you can imagine. A lot of downs, a lot of hurdles. And luckily, more and more people now supporting our cause and beliefs.
I want to give the audience just a tiny context because you were mentioning the Utopia conference. That was one of the events I was honored to also create in your space. And the Utopia conference was highlighting, I would say visionaries and doers who actually already went on that path, still as pioneers 20 years ago, for sustainable living, for impact-driven organizations. And we were sharing ideas and questions how to co-create a world that would work for everyone and also for a planet to still thrive and resources not being depleted on all of these things. So I love that you bring this in, but it's 20 years ago. And if I may just direct our conversation into what you're doing today. So what I feel very impressive, I can say, knowing you and have been knowing you for so many years, that really your leadership and the models that you are now claiming and inspiring other people also to buy in is from ownership to stewardship, right? And it already sounded also a little bit like that when you were describing beforehand that, our resources are limited. We cannot just exploit natural resources, but it's also about how can we create more fair models to co-live on this planet. And that's why I love this shift. I can definitely say you are embodying the shift from ownership to stewardship. So maybe you can also share with the audience what made you make that shift. Was there maybe one moment or a story? Maybe it was a process. But when you decided to say, I want to now co-create projects and companies that are stewardship and not ownership based.
Yeah, that's another radical step in my life. I mean, since I started this path of being like, okay, I don't want to tag along with the masses and exploit. What I just mentioned before, 20, 30 years ago, I decided to become an ambassador for the environment and for the planet. And also moving and doing steps, doing a lot of mistakes, not knowing how, but being with this intention and consciousness in that field. I started and developed places such as the Malzfabrik place you mentioned in Berlin with the beautiful event spaces and atelier studios. We called it content or value-based development. So that was another idea, impact focused, but also for-profit, classical real estate development. And I underestimated, I have to say, the structure of ownership until recently, 2-3 years ago, where we had a classical structure in doing so. I mean, you are somebody is owner or of the real estate company. He is holding the shares and he decides where to sell or what to buy or build. And so in that sense, you could also say capital rules. And then I really experienced this case of, okay, the value goes up too much. It's just too much of a event if we sell too much of a profit to ignore. Even for very decent, very, people, impact-oriented people, there is this greed in everybody. And that really bothered me, or I was looking into that in the last years. And I was trying to find a way, how can we deal with that, with this human shadow that also causes so much collateral damage in the end if we go along with the market optimum in maximization. And out of this recent experience, I started a new system you know very well, Danny, and I'm super, super, super excited and grateful to have you on board in our investment holding, which is the Earth Guardian idea. That's what I came up with then about 2 years ago, which is the first real estate investment company in Germany, probably in Europe, is steward owned alongside with the Purpose Foundation. And that's so exciting because it holds a whole different understanding of ownership. Maybe also you question how I came up with it. I must also say a large role in this understanding of ownership comes from my work with indigenous tribes and their traditions and supporting them in their human rights and in their environmental issues they face. And out of that and out of looking into their way of living, questioned or also had really amazing conversations about how they understand ownership. They own this land. They don't know that. It's a famous quote of Steve Seattle from 1870. We don't own the land, we're part of it. And this is so true to me, became so clear that, yeah, and I'm so grateful that I found this system with the Purpose Foundation that actually supports exactly this idea.
Mm.
There's a structure, even in Germany, very bureaucratic country. There is a solid structure supporting that. And finally, I feel home.
It's still a quite new system, so many of our listeners might not know it, and specifically we are also an international audience. So for those who are interested, we will put some links in the caption so you can have a look into these models because they're really mind-blowing in so many ways. And I love that you're bringing up also the indigenous cultures and traditions that show us so much of what we have forgotten just because we have been growing up in a society now that has focus on so many other things. But let's not get into that too much. Bring us back to what you were just sharing so beautifully, this coming up with a new concept. You just make it sound so easily, but I feel that it's good to also share with our audience, like, what were hurdles, or when you think back, from the moment that you realized, okay, this old model does maybe work financially, but it doesn't really resonate with my values and with my understanding how I want to also be a steward for this world or for this planet. I'm sure that there were also difficult moments where you really had to let go. And I would love for you, if you are open for it, to share a little bit what was something that you really emotionally or professionally, when you realized, okay, the old model is not working, what did you have to let go? What was maybe the hardest part to actually make that decision?
That's hard to say. That's probably because I'm really good at letting go. Once you understand, and that's I get to talk to a lot to rich people, to investing people in the real estate world. It means you have to be able to move substantial amounts of funds to buy land and buildings. And often I tell them, once you understand that you actually don't own anything, you don't have to be afraid of misinvesting because you can't lose things.
Mhm.
It's a number in your bank account and it's all artificial.
Mm.
So that's one thing. And if I really personally went down that path, being a minimalist, reducing my footprint in all ways I can. So in that sense, losing or stepping back from one or another project isn't that difficult anymore. Although I put a lot of love into all the things I do, and it's really tough. It's like a piece of art. It's like a baby for me
Mm.
to let go. So there is maybe also a mourning process. Also a process of saying goodbye to something and someone. It even has a soul. I also call it soul spaces. But that's the whole thing. If you can look at it also as with a person, and they leave your life, and still there's something. It's all about. It's often energetic work.
Mm.
And then yet, once you understand that, letting go is easy because they don't really go. So having said that, on the other side, it's a question of focus and being in now with the Earth Guardian project and the Earth Guardian funded projects, which are in this steward ownership system. And that's something it's quite new now. So there's no question of letting it go. It's something I feel being responsible for, and we are building it up, and we are in this fundraising phase for different projects. So that's really like, okay, I go there. And at the same time, letting go the idea that I am running this project, presenting ownership in some way, or I own shares of it. So that happened in the past with the project, with me personally.
Mm.
I have quite some rights to say what's going on and how to deal with the construction or whatever it was. And that's going to be seen now. It's really difficult because you are in developers and architects and scapers in my team, and we have visions and ideas on how to, is this one maybe to build and what to build, and at the same time to stay completely open and not being having the say, but somebody has to have this responsibility. And the beautiful thing is, and we are taking that too. That's really important also to step and say, okay, I'm in charge. I do that, but I don't claim to be right, and I do it. I don't do it for me and for my pockets, and that's a huge change. So it's really beautiful to see and invite people to co-create and to also, what might be a good idea, because it's not also the best idea. Probably mostly so far it wasn't to maximize the built environment in the spaces we bought. So that's also, if you think money maximization, that's what you do ideally to make more money. And in our case, we often think about how to avoid construction, because it's a huge CO2 emittent, and how can we de-seal our Mother Earth? How can we bring her into breathing more, gain more natural soil, and how can we grow organically? How can we heal the planet by building right roofs on the? At the same time, how can we stay profitable in the sense that we can cover our costs, bring a return to the, which is what we call an organic return. That's really important. If you look at returns, just to mention that, unfortunately, because everybody would think like, okay, what's the return? And we do need a return, and we understand that's also sustainable to be economically sustaining. And the big thing is it has to be regulated or dosed in a way that's a harmless, less harmful way.
When you look back, was there a moment of doubt? Was there a moment whether you questioned yourself, whether this path you want to continue is too idealistic, is too slow, or too risky? Specifically in the industry you're in, it's very new.
Oh, yeah. That's really recently, I think, like lately, I really had to undergo that very process in the last year, the year of the snake, letting go of these ideas of solutions, fixes, money. Probably a lot of entrepreneurs and people in sustainable fields would agree that it was a very difficult year. Sustainability it's just not sexy enough anymore in the investment field, or not as interesting as it was before with gear-driven security industry, or then the AI industry being much more interesting or offering just higher returns. And that's again the thing, return dilemma. And in that, stepping into a sustainable field with a whole new concept that needs explanations, and finding the right messages to explain a complex thing in an easy way. I think we're quite good now at it, but still we can make it easier probably. Because it is easy what we do and what we offer. But that's a big step. And there are a lot of doubts. And also for me, it's my future. Yeah. I don't have any doubt that that's the right thing to do. It may change, and you have to turn some screws in the structure, because it happened to me 20 years with a great success financially. People hold projects I never intended to sell. So I can show that it's working. It's just, so the invitation now is just, let's do it in a different way. In that sense, there is no doubt.
That's great to hear. When we have these moments, often these moments also teach us something. We gain something out of it, right? And what I'm hearing from you, which is really beautiful, is that because you understand the bigger picture of it, and there are things we need to let go and transform, and you seem to be, as you said yourself, having not the big issues to letting go of things. But I can see from also our co-creation that you're very open for new evolution, like new developments and new ideas. And I think that's the core of it. The essence is the trust, the trust that that your values, your principles, and the idea that kind of came to you how to co-create this is something that you hold sacred. Like when you're speaking about indigenous traditions and everything, you hold sacred, and you have an integrity for your own values, and that's keeping you doing what you're doing. That's beautiful to see. You were just speaking to how difficult it sometimes is to break down the complexity of everything that you were describing, specifically for people who might not yet be so familiar with these concepts. So if you had to describe this stewardship model to a traditional investor in real estate or a CEO, how would you explain it without losing its soul, with giving up of the values it also contains?
Well, it is really the sole model as a structure to buy real estate without owning it. It sounds a little bit like a paradox, but the thing is, and you can also call it, and the structure itself is known as a profit participating loan. It's a loan, meaning you pay a loan, you get interest, you get everything that comes out of the real estate. So it's super easy. It's financially no difference to owning the real estate and getting profit out of the real estate. The thing is, it's a loan, so it means you don't have a voting right. A voting right is with the steward. It's really the key. There's somebody who is taking care, and of course, it's all people that are involved with the project, and they get a vote, they get a say in the project, the people who work there. And that's the idea of steward ownership. People who use their voice for something that's bigger than them. And that's it. It just takes away your ego. That's the whole thing. It's not a single person thinking of their own benefit only. It's okay to think of your benefit, but not only. That's the big thing.
Yeah,
it's good for me and it's for everything else. And to always be with this intention in that field, I'm really, really looking forward on how a lot of people already ask how we operate, because I don't know yet. We first have to, we have to bring the projects into place and then see what happens. And how we make decisions in what way. And that's, by the way, a field to study indigenous processes, operating processes, if you want, how they do it in their communal organization. And that's really, something I'm really looking forward to in the near future. Be helpful there. Yeah, and you could also say we are all ambassadors and not managers. Yeah. That's also the good explanation of, okay, we are not managing anything. We are just, taking the caretaker or guardians.
When you design a place, I know that the projects that are now then from the company Real Future helped to be developed. And when you're designing these places, whether it's a building or whether it's a community space, what are the human qualities you consciously designing for? What are you having in mind? You can also speak about values if you want to, but what is it that is kind of the North Star for you to develop these places?
The things I consciously have in mind is really, on one hand, I have to go back to this, like, value driven is one thing. Okay, what's the value and what's the main use of the space? You would say you look at it this way always as an architect or a developer. It's like, okay, the usage clusters, let's say, who is it for? Who is the tenant in the end? In my case, it's all, I also, on top of that, I always also look at energetics. I can't say it in a different way. It's the feeling of the place when we are done, when we are putting love into it. We put love, meaning there's construction machines coming and a lot of workers building something, but it's an energy we put in there. So that takes you away also from this idea from attachments. Who is the person I want to do a favor? Who is needy? I mean, that's all being out of a judgment. But technically we do try to find the most people or the users of our space who are not there yet or in need. I mean, we are doing a lot of analysis. We work a lot very, very strongly with the city. And in this one project we do now, where we build a whole quarter, we found out there's no swimming pool in the whole city. They don't have a swimming pool. So we include a public swimming option and pool into our project, which is a city quarter building. So all these things come out from analysis we do. And then the other thing is the energetic part, is the indigenous part, really connecting with the land, listening to the land for permission. That's rituals we do. I really do all over, making the right decision out of my heart. And interestingly, it feels right for everybody else who pays good money. It's not a bad deal, also financially. not only romantic. You also have to be responsible for money you get and you invest. That's also this view. I'm so happy that more and more people really understand that.
I can imagine that it's sometimes not that easy. You know, it sounds very easy you speaking to it now, but in these like stewardship councils or communities or project teams,
Mm.
you're often bridging exactly these very different realities, you know, from investors to artists to tenants to being the steward for the land. So how do you yourself stay grounded when these worlds maybe even collide, you know, when there's different interests coming together? So how do you discharge your own tension? How can you stay grounded?
Yeah, it's a daily practice. And also what you mentioned or asked before, reassuring what am I doing? Or is it really like, am I still following my purpose? Am I speaking my truth? Because then you encounter, a person in when you say something collides, would guess you encounter somebody who just, speaks a different language. He doesn't understand you. And that causes disharmony and stress. Sure. And in that moment, it's really important not to be stressed and say, this person just didn't get it. That would be wrong. It's really the other question. What can I change so that person understands my language better? And I always look into myself and I don't, yeah, it's really important not to blame anybody. Mm.
When you imagine someone actually living in one of these beautiful spaces you are stewarding that the team is co-creating or co-designing to live in, when you imagine them to live there, let's say a few generations from now, or maybe 50 years from now, how do you want people to feel living in their spaces?
This is really interesting because I believe the structure we are choosing now as a new structure is the only one that really can ensure that it still exists in 50 years, because most of the projects would have been sold by then. And that's really the time frame is so important. We are looking at more than 50 years. It's really the 7 generations idea, as again from indigenous, because there's no ego, there's no I'm selling, there's no I'm putting something onto my grandchildren. So it's much longer, even longer than 50 years. But it's beautiful because in 50 years, my aim in the projects we start now is really that they are completely owned by themselves. And that's something really new. If you think of a land, there is only one piece of land I know so far. 8 years ago in New Zealand, the Wanganui River, it's a river that was given back to be the right of being a river. And you have to add the river if you want to change anything or you use it for fishing or bridge. And that sounds funny, but that's really, that's the idea. And our projects now in 50 years, if they are successful, all the capital, all the impact loan, which we call our funding loans of our Earth Guardians, is paid back. Their interest is paid back. And that means that there is still more profit, which they don't take. They're not entitled to take. That's important also maybe to say in that structure. But also nobody else takes that exceed profit, but the real estate itself. So the shares stay with the foundation, the Purpose Foundation, and the land, and there is no shareholder who gets the profits paid out, dividends. 50 years, we can use these profits for lowering the rents, for including more people, so that creates the life, I imagine, that there is an abundance and wealth out of the real estate, like the rents which are not paid, are used to support people in need, or also environmental plants and animals, whatever is feasible in that area, or is right for the stewards that are in charge in 50 years. And that's my dream.
What do you believe when you speak about the leaders, you know, the people you are now attracting? I mean, whether investors or architects or people who want to co-create the spaces. What do you believe changes inside one of these peoples when they make the shift from ownership to guardianship?
My statement too is the embodiment of investing. Having an investment decision is pretty easy. That it's a low risk, it's a good interest rate, so that's the easy part, and you can do it with just a number crunching brain in your portfolio. You could do that. And our baby as as co-founders of Earth Guardian want to really ensure that there is an experience to it and that you can give and invest out of a heart frequency, out of a different frequency. I think that's the main, that's the only way you can really move an investor or leader. It's inside and you move their frequency and their consciousness if you want. Why do I invest? And how, but not what anymore. It doesn't matter what you buy in terms of real estate. Yesterday, I had this conversation with an investor. In that example, it was really interesting because he said we want to have voting rights, which are excluded in our structure. So we need to figure it out how we can make something similar possible, because he wants to make sure that we not sell. But that's it's already given, and it's really interesting. Like, yeah, it's all good. You have to comfort the people to say, yeah, I understand your voting rights and you want to do it for the exact same cause. That's why you don't have a voting right.
Yes, right.
But nobody can sell it. So don't worry.
When you hear when leaders evolve, the world changes, what feels true for you in this moment of your life?
When evolvement means really what it should mean, right? I guess that's what I understand. Evolving internally, not on my bank account or size of anything in the company, but on my intentions and how I look at the world and why do I do things. And if I can use my leadership power to do exactly that and nothing else, with no compromise and with all my heart. And I could see it also in my team. That's when you can really change more than you could do by one person. That's when you have people who work with you, who believe in you, who invest in you, because they feel you're on a mission.
Beautiful. One more question I have for you. If stewardship had one word you would offer to our listeners today, what would be the word?
Maybe integrity in the terms of seeking for something else out of another place in my ego.
It's a really great pleasure to have this moment with you and hearing all of your thoughts and ideas. Although we know each other quite well, it's always very inspiring for me. Thank you for that. Is there anything else you would like to share before we close this conversation?
So far now, it was a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much. I think we said it all. I mean, I'm really grateful to being able to talk about everything I do lately, I do in the future, I am, and to have this platform, to have you on my side. Looking forward to see you again. And of course, you are happy to put links in the show notes and people can reach out. And we are happy to continue with listeners.
Thank you so much, Frank, for your time. Everyone else out there who wants to know more about this beautiful model of stewardship, steward ownership, not only for real estate and specifically now for Frank in the world of real estate, we're going to put these links into the show notes so you can find more information. But also if you're interested in actually really looking into some projects that we are co-creating and co-developing with the loans that Frank was speaking about, we will also put in some information for you. And please feel free to reach out to any of us. And we are always happy to have a conversation. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.